Okay, let's start by talking about the grind. This is Ethiopian coffee. I'm pretty sure it's Sidamo, but it could be Yogurchev. That's what I normally use. It's a medium roast, and that makes a big difference. Darker roasts have lost more moisture, and so the way in which the coffee being grinded is actually different depending on how you set the machine. Let me show you how this looks in my hand here. You can notice quite a fine grind here. I think part of the problem people may be having with their pour-overs is you actually need a pretty fine ground coffee. Not quite where espresso is, but not a million miles away either. On my machine here, that is a 3. So you can see here to a 3. And obviously everyone's machines are different. But yeah, if you're doing grinding that you use French press, it's not going to work. Okay, let's briefly talk about what we're using here. This is the 02 Hario v60, the plastic one. The 01 is kind of small. I used to have a porcelain one, but I broke it. But the plastic ones are actually very good when it comes to how they handle heat, and also pretty cheap. Using the Hario own papers, there's various different types of Hario papers depending on where they're made. This one I think is European. I actually prefer the Japanese ones. They have a silkier flavour. The European ones have this little tab these days. Okay, to prepare the paper, it's hard to do this with one hand while holding the phone. And first thing to do is obviously to fold along the seam like this. So you fold along the seam, you open the paper. Normally I run my finger along the crease. And then we have the Hario ready for use. Right, now the next thing we do is we wet the filter paper. This is an important step. It's very easy to do. Put a little bit of water in the filter paper till it's pretty much all wet. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit dry at the top. Let it all drain through. Once it's completely dry in the middle or near enough, I just set it aside and throw away the water so that we're not diluting our coffee unduly. Now we add the coffee. Have here about 12 grams of coffee. Now, I'm happy with the amount of coffee I use. Some people use a lot more. I've seen some guys that talk about using 22 grams. For me, 12 grams, which in one of these scoops is basically completely to the top, it's about right. Sometimes they go a little bit more, 13, 14. Not that strict. Coffee sits in the bottom like this. Again, it's a fine ground. Now this step is absolutely crucial. And if you don't do it, your coffee is going to be weak and under extracted, and especially if you freshly grind it. It's called blooming. How do you bloom coffee? You add a tiny bit of water, enough that all the grounds are wet, and then you wait. Now the fresher the coffee, the longer you need to bloom it for. Blooming is degassing. It removes all the gases that were created during the roasting process so that they don't come out when you're adding the water and push the water away from your bean, leading to under extraction. The fresher your coffee, the more you need to bloom it. The more freshly it's ground, the more you need to bloom it. And also darker coffees need blooming a little bit more. You can judge how long it takes. I did this for a minute in the video, and really it's going to end up being about 2 minutes by the time it's finished. Okay. Now for me this is the final step. Oh, not quite, I forgot something. Watch this. A little pinch of sea salt. This might sound weird, but trust me on this. Okay. Now the pour. You want to pour the water directly onto the coffee, not onto the sides. Some people pour it slow, some people pour it fast. This is what I'm going to do. take a bit of time. It should take a minute and a half. All these bubbles are the gas coming out of the coffee. There'd be even more if we didn't bloom it. If we bloomed it longer, or even done a second bloom, there'd be less. This is a completely fresh bag, so there's quite a lot of air, quite a lot of coffee gases. What I'm looking for is a little bit of coffee grounds around the side here, but most towards the middle. It'll take its time. See, when I poured it, I poured the water up to almost the top, but not quite. It's about 1 centimetre from the top there. Some people prefer to pour it little by little. This I find easier. Still draining. It's pretty much done. Take it off here. It's still dripping a little bit, nothing significant. Let me have a cup of coffee. You see, it's pretty dark. If I hold it up to the light, you can see through it if it's right up against the bright light. When it's not particularly translucent, and here we are. Decent flavour. On balance, maybe it should have been gassed a second time. The coffee I used was literally, I only opened the bag a minute or two before it was ground, and I think that makes a little bit of a difference. This probably needs another day or so this season, or maybe we should have added more water to debloom it, because it's come out a little bit less strong than I would like it. But overall it's a decent cup of coffee, and yeah, that's how you use my v60.